guys. Oh my goodness. Sorry I'm late. I'm also without Ryan Meeks because, well, duty calls. He had an appointment that he absolutely could not reschedule, and he is unfortunately a realtor first. And so he is hopefully signing a listing agreement right now and will be on this live next week. So sorry for the false advertisement, but I literally got a last minute notice, and I totally understand because I'm also late because my day job is very time consuming at the moment. So I hope that you guys are off to an awesome start of the year. My year has not gone like the Taylor Swift song. I am not feeling 22. In fact, I almost wish it was 2021 still. I got in a car accident yesterday. Not a bad one. Obviously, I'm here. Yes. Did you hear about that, Zeke?
I did.
Whose fault did you hear it was?
The dumb people.
Good answer. So, Zeke is our awesome editor, but also works at my husband's studio. So it's just a funny inside family joke. But yeah, so that's how it started. And interest rates have been bananas, although they started calming down. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. And this is just the time of year when we literally have, I would say, like quadruple the amount of work that we normally have. And it feels like everyone's out with COVID and or has depression. So it's rough. It's rough, but I'm hanging in there. In fact, guess what, guys? I have most of this eyebrow and definitely this one. So I would say that it was like, I've lived. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks for my weird rant, for listening to it. So let's see who's on here. We got Jesus on here just to annoy Javier. Yay. We live for that. We got Jen, who we love. Rod and Laura. God, I love you guys. Thank you so much. Green energy rules. Yay for green energy. Jay Law. Cool. Jay from Washington. Miguel Rivera. Aaron Moriano. Whoop, whoop. So if you have any real estate questions, guys, she's your gal. She'll answer them. Ricardo Cruz. So awesome, guys. Get your questions here. I'm going to give a quick market snapshot. So last week, just so you guys know, interest rates had a huge spike. In fact, the highest increase in interest rates in over 2 years. And there's a lot of misinformation on what was happening. I read a bunch of loan officers saying that the Fed was selling off all of their assets and that this is why. And now they've become the biggest seller. But they're not selling off their assets. They're tapering off the amount that they're purchasing. And investors just weren't interested in purchasing. Along with that, just so you guys know, there was no negative economic reports. The Omicron and variant for coronavirus isn't posing as deep of an economic threat as we once thought. Inflation is in line with expectations. I mean, everything is going great. Unemployment numbers were down, wages were higher. And so when the economy is going strong, people don't invest in bonds, and they definitely don't invest in mortgage-backed securities. Now that interest rates are so low, the return on them is very low. And so you just have to know that bonds and MBSs, like, they're an investment for fear times when people are worried. And so long as we don't have anything to worry about economically, we're going to see them continuing to rise. And so my expectation from here into the near future is that interest rates are going to gradually rise. Now, having said that, though, remember how I said they don't just like spike up? Well, when you look at a chart, right, you'll see moments when it goes like this and then like this, and it staggers up like a staircase. And so that's kind of what we've seen this week. So we've seen some corrections in the bond market. It started Tuesday. We saw some today. And, there was like minimal news, like inflation came in line with what was expected. If it was higher than expectations, man, we would have seen a move in interest rates. So that was great. I'm knocking on wood for, no more chaos. And the other thing is that lumber prices were way higher than people expected. And so again, because that might impact supply chain, we saw a little bit of a dip. And so whenever you hear news that's going to impact stocks, expect that we will see some improvement in mortgage-backed securities. But for the main focus trajectory, interest rates are going up. Okay. Now, you will want to check with your loan officers. This is not a mortgage quote. I am a licensed loan officer, but I'm only giving you tangible advice. I'm not quoting you on loan programs or interest rates. Okay. I feel like you're fully disclaimed now. Okay, so let's get to some of these questions, and then I will get to the emails that I received. So, so Rod and Laura says, curious how the market is doing this week. Feds are looking to increase 4 times this year on rates. So what people are talking about is actually the Fed funds rate, and this is the rate at which the government loans out money to banks. It's not mortgage rates, and people often get them confused. So yes, it does have an indirect correlation with how mortgage rates will be, but essentially they have to give investors more motivation to buy mortgage-backed or to buy bonds. And in order to do that, they have to raise rates so that they get a better return. So they are going to continue to escalate, taper their asset purchases, at a faster pace, and then try to get rid of whatever they have off their books. And so, yeah, it'll be crazy. This is unprecedented times. We have nothing to compare it to. And so I'm just going to keep reporting on this. This will probably get old, but this is just like unprecedented times and unprecedented economic policy. So I hope that helps. So Green Energy says, tuning in from Phoenix, hoping to hear a market update. Rod and Laura, Green Energy, let me know if I got you for a market update. Oh, one final note, guys. I did see another final report, and this is through my mortgage. It's called MBS Highway. So they do a lot of mortgage reporting, a lot of analytics, and they also thought that their prediction for housing increases like nationwide, so this is appreciation we're talking about, was going to be in the high like single digits to low mid double digits. So just so you guys know, the ranges of home value increases across the nation is anywhere between like 8% and 15%. And these are all economic reports from like Zillow to CoreLogic to Fannie Mae. They're kind of all over the place. But this report that I follow, religiously, I check it multiple times a day. I think Barry Habib is one of the smartest people when it comes to analytics and the market in general. He's predicting an 8.5% increase. So there's that. All right, so let's see. Okay, so Ricardo says, I've been doing Instacart and Uber full-time for 2 years. Am I allowed to deduct 56 cents per mile? However, should I deduct less in order to show a higher income to get approved for better odds? Okay, so fun fact, depending on how you write that off, typically your mileage, if it's done in the auto expense area for a Schedule C, you can actually add a percentage back of your mileage into your income. So I would just write off whatever is reasonable for your taxes, and obviously speak to a tax advisor, speak to a loan officer. One thing that I will caveat any of you people who are doing self-employed taxes, most of the time you guys try not to pay anything to Uncle Sam, but the more expenses, the more write-offs you have, the lower the net take-home income is, and that is actually what we use for qualifying for your home loan. So if you don't pay taxes, chances are you aren't going to qualify for the purchase price that you want to. All right. Ooh, Shadow Llama, good to see you back. And then we have Paul Ernest says, happy Wednesday, first time joining on this live. Well, welcome. My question is, what are we going to see in interest rates? I know the Fed is raising in March and rates are going up now as a reflection, or will we see them go higher? I think that the market's pretty much priced in, the fact that the Fed is changing their monetary policy. I think we saw that take place last week, and we're going to continue to see a rise in interest rates over time. Again, that's talking about the Fed funds rate. That really does not impact mortgage rates. They do sometimes trade in parallel, and when you see increases in the Fed funds rate, sometimes it does impact mortgage rates, and people get them confused all the time. One thing that is for sure changing in March, though, and I should have said this in my market update, but if you are buying a vacation property, so a second home, you will want to try to do that at the very beginning of the year. After March, they're going to put in some pretty steep penalties in terms of pricing hits for second homes. And this is, again, like I said, their attempt to make housing more affordable. A lot of first-time home buyers, a lot of occupant home buyers are getting priced out of the market to investors and people who are paying large amounts of money for, vacation rentals like Airbnbs. And so these are going to be priced like a regular investment property. So you can still buy them, but the interest rates are going to be a lot higher. So just an FYI, if that is something that you were thinking of doing, you might want to jump on that now as opposed to later. All right, so Miguel Rivera says, I'm closing on my new construction. Congratulations. No big delays so far. So you're saying I need to lock in my interest rate as early as possible. Um, it's hard because May is kind of out there, and most places will charge you an arm and a leg for a 90-day lock. Um, I think you really have to get with your loan officer on that and do some pricing scenarios and decide what you think is right for your budget, what you feel comfortable with, and then have him do some scenarios, or her do some scenarios based on 0.25% higher and 0.5% higher, and see how you feel with those payments. Um, you know, Oftentimes most people will break even somewhere between 5 and 7 years on buying discount points. So if this isn't your long-term investment, if this is a starter home, if you're going to plan on moving in under that time period, you definitely don't want to pay high costs to get your loan. So that's my best advice. Speak to your loan officer. Okay, so I'm scared. You know what? I'm scared of the rate jumps too. They have been no fun to navigate, let me tell you. But here's what I know, and it's the thing I constantly preach on. Your mortgage payment shouldn't be dictated by $100. And most mortgage, like if a mortgage interest jumps about a percentage, we're talking about somewhere between $130, $160, right, for most people. And so if that's going to make or break your purchase budget, you might not have been in the right position to purchase anyway. And so we really want to hammer in on our budgets. We want to tighten our finances. I literally do this once a year, and it's shocking how many dumb subscriptions I enroll in from an app that I downloaded, or I'm into skincare, and so I get wrapped up in a lot of those little $9.99 things. And so I just canceled $200 worth of subscriptions that I wasn't even truly aware that I was paying. And so there's lots of little ways in your budget now that you can save the money that you might be paying for a higher interest rate. So I would definitely say hammer into your budget ASAP. All right. So Alexandra Brooks says, IBR student loan payments are still on pause due to the CARES Act. Can I still qualify for a mortgage with my IBR payment? It depends on how it's reporting on credit. And it also depends on the loan program that you have. So I know that FHA, even if it's on an IBR, yeah, well, shoot. If it's in a forbearance status, it's a 0.5% payment on FHA. It's also on Freddie Mac, and then a 1% on Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae does IBR payments, and honestly, off the top of my head, I wanted to say that FHA changed to that, but I'm going to have to double check because that just changed really recently, and off the top of my head, after a long day, I'm going blank on that. Actually, I'm going to phone in a friend on that, and I will get back to you on it. So if it reports on credit as an IBR payment, hypothetically, yes, on a Fannie Mae program for sure. If it doesn't, then I would estimate somewhere like a 0.5% and try to go FHA or Freddie Mac. And I'm going to confirm whether or not FHA does an IBR payment in a few seconds. Okay. All right. So I'm going to skip that. I will get back to you, I promise. Okay, so Rod and Laura says, thank you for the food for thought and acknowledge for this week, LOL. Okay, well, hopefully it was great and it answered your questions. All right, so Real Tech Mar says, with the uncertainty on variable rates, is it safe or wise to take out a HELOC for $20,000 in the next couple of months? Okay, so a $20,000 line of credit, guys, on a variable rate isn't what you think it is. So it's not based on it's not based on 300,000 where it's really going to impact your monthly payment. Most credit cards, right, are upwards of 29%, and they can have balances as high as 20,000. And so long as you understand what your payment plan is. So I always like to budget for 20% on debt reduction. So, and you pay simple interest on a line of credit like this. And so no, it doesn't compound. So no, I'm not super worried about it being variable. No, I don't even think it's going to get close to 29%. I think if you're paying anywhere between 6 and 10%, I think for short-term money, I think that's actually fairly inexpensive. So no, but it also depends on what you're doing with it, you know? Like if you're taking out 20,000 and the interest rate's 10% for an auto loan, you might just look for a cheaper auto loan. So that's just my food for thought. I still think lines of credit are okay. But it also depends on like what you're doing with the money and then what the terms are. All right. Get your guys' questions in here. Sorry, I keep hitting the mic. Hopefully those not sound like that. Okay, and I'm going to some of these questions. All right. Oh. You guys, I'm like world's worst texter. So sometimes I try to text fast and then like literally people are like, so the response was what? And my text made no sense. All right. Watch my live. All right. Okay. So Jala, hold on one second. I'm going to get to Frank Mai's question. Can my dad use his equity to pay off my loan and then I pay him back using the same strategy? I don't know why that would make any sense. You know, whenever you're pulling out equity on a property, you are like paying closing costs, paying a higher interest rate. To do multiple refinances in a short period of time doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. So I would need a lot more feedback on why you would do this in the first place. I think that if you can just qualify for one loan when you're ready, that probably makes the most sense. And then it wouldn't penalize your dad for a higher interest rate on a cash out refinance. Okay, so this is what Patrick said. So he is an underwriter for me. He said FHA is a 0.5% payment or the actual documented payment reporting to credit. So if that's an IBR payment, that will, and it's reporting on credit, Alexandra, that should work. If it's not, then it's going to be a 0.5%. Okay. All right. Thanks to my phone friend, Patrick. Okay. All right, so let's get to Jalal. So it says, I'm considering a cash out refinance, getting $100,000 to pay off all of my loans, and then I will use the monthly savings from the credit payments to make extra payments on my mortgage to speed up the terms. I actually think this is a brilliant way. So a lot of times when you're paying short-term debt and you're paying one higher interest than you would pay, and because the payments are amortized over a longer time period, right, you have a lesser expense on a monthly basis and you can put more money towards principal, which will accelerate your payoff. So I think this is a brilliant idea and I'm super excited that you're doing this. She says, my rate is 3.25 and I have an offer with a cash out with 3.25, but it'll cost, it'll be the cost of $18,000. I would also, you're also getting an offer on a HELOC. Well, obviously, based on my expression, I think $18,000 is kind of a lot in closing costs. So a couple things, right, just to get myself back into like a more professional and less surprised tone of voice. Whenever you're making a financial decision, one that pays off debt, you really want to compare what you're paying now, like all of the monthly expenses, all of the interest, how long it's going to take you to pay them off, right? And then versus what you would actually pay, right, to get the loan. So you have to see a huge savings in that, and you want to see a break-even point somewhere around 2 years or less. And if you don't see that, you really have to question if this is the right way to go about it. Now, if you want to compare and contrast, right? So maybe A is like, a 3.25, maybe you find out what par is, right? So that's a rate that doesn't cost you anything. And then you look at what just getting a line of credit is and your mortgage payment versus the mortgage payment and all of your debt payments. And you really want to compare them side by side. I know at our company, we do a total cost analysis so we can put side by side loan scenarios and make it way easier for you to see. But to me, just off the top of my head, $18,000 in costs to tag on to your mortgage, right, that have nothing to do with paying down your principal debt is high. Like, I think that's high. Okay. Yeah, the closing cost of $18,000 I think is high. Now, I don't know if that's just closing costs or if those property taxes included in that. Some areas like right now, I know if you're closing on a mortgage in Arizona, property taxes are due in October and March. And so you may have to be paying 6 months worth of property taxes. That wouldn't necessarily be a closing cost. But if it's $18,000 in costs, I think you should look at multiple scenarios. All right. So Ryan asks, are forbearances over? Do I see this happening again if COVID kicks up again? Yeah, forbearances for the most part are over in terms of like, can you get a forbearance? I mean, I believe some lenders are still doing loan modifications. Some might even be extending forbearances, but like the nationwide CARES Act program is done. There are still people that, were able to extend and probably have a couple months left over on that. But as a continuing product, it does not exist in the format that we've seen it in. Now, I don't, I don't see a halt in the economy like we saw with the original COVID virus. I mean, obviously, I'm not a psychic and I'm also not an economist, but I just think that we're past that point. And so I don't see when we'd have like a nationwide stop, of going to work. So I don't see a forbearance program happening. And in fact, I think delinquencies are literally not anything to worry about. They've made a super small percentage increase in comparison to what we've had over the last 2 years, which has been basically no foreclosures. And so I know that there was a big thought that there was all this shadow inventory of delinquent borrowers, but guys, it looks like they're paying. It looks like they're reemerging or they're selling their properties. It does not look like we're going to have this wave of extra inventory. And I just don't see the need for a forbearance right now. Okay, so Sherry Gao says for new construction homes. Okay, so if you have a credit card loans unpaid off, will you be approved for a loan with around a 650 credit score for new construction loan? Well, I mean, here's what I will tell you. Many people qualify with credit card debt, with personal loan debt, with auto loans. It really just depends on the amount of income that you're making, the purchase price that you're buying, and whether or not you meet the 45% debt to income ratio requirement. In some cases, you can go up to 57. It just really depends on the loan program. But nothing that you're saying in this little like message board is anything that I would say, no, you couldn't get a loan for. But you, again, will have to apply with a bank and have them review your whole scenario. Okay, so Miguel says, thanks, Lizzie. I'm more worried about getting a high rate, not because of budget, mainly because I was hopeful in the long term. Okay, because it's hopefully going to be a long-term home for us. Yes, and I totally understand that. And the reason that I was saying like really like lean into your budget is because a lot of times we get really, really hung up on the interest rate number. And yes, over the course of 30 years, if this was going to be a house that you stayed in for 30 years, right, that number does add up and it can be thousands of dollars. The truth, though, is that most people will live in their homes, somewhere between 7 to 13 years, which is still a long time. A lot of times people will refinance their loans after 4 years. And because life situations happen, they want home improvements, they want to take cash out, they want to go to a different term, or they'll move. And so I see a lot more people who pay big costs end up like even breaking even or just breaking even. And I just think that there's a lot smarter ways to use money right now, like paying off high interest debt, investing in the stock market, maxing out your 401k, then I think paying down to get a lower mortgage rate, I don't think that there is a huge financial difference, to you between a 3.75 rate and a 3.5 rate. And so that's what I'm cautioning you to do is just look at the overall financial picture. Because I've seen people pay big costs to get a low interest rate and really just not save anything, I guess, to make a very long explanation shorter. Zeke was rolling his eyes. I must have gone too long. Okay. So multi-rage 1234 says, do you see the market somewhat cooling down because your buddy Javier Medina says that he thinks it might calm down with home prices going too high? Yeah. So overall, guys, the market has slowed down. But here's the thing. There are still more people than homes available. And so if you have 20 people that are interested in one house and demand goes down by 50%, which sounds like a very large number, you still have 10 to 1 in terms of the ratio for number of people versus the houses. And so 10 is still very large competition. And so that is still why they're predicting that home values will increase. Now, I'd rather go against 10 people than 20, and we were going against 60 people last year. So yes, demand is down. It's a lot more buyer friendly, but is it like a buyer's market? No, we're not close. And so is it more buyer favorable? Absolutely. And so you just have to think about, it depends on what news you're reading or what your perspective or your expectations are. I know lots of people are still wanting, the days when you could bid like, 90% of asking price and get them to pay all your closing costs. I don't think that we're close to that kind of market. So I hope that explains that. Let's see. Jorge says, we have an AO on a condo. Can we use an attorney? Oh, do you have an offer out on a condo? Can we use an attorney fees as a tax write-off next year? What else are taxes? And you know what? Honestly, we use a title company as the intermediary and real estate agents in Arizona. So, and I don't know if any of those costs are honestly tax deductible. I do know that mortgage interest is tax deductible, depending on your income bracket and property taxes. But you're really going to have to speak to a CPA on that. Sorry. That wasn't that much help, but I hope it was some. Okay. Thanks, Miguel. I'm glad you see what I'm saying. Okay, so what does the sweat happy face emoji mean? I'm not 100%. I'm an old person, so help me out. Okay, Simplest Sophie says, Lizy, can you further explain what you mean by shopping for a loan on the same day at the same time? Okay, so I've never meant this more than I mean it in this type of environment. Guys, interest rates have been changing literally hour by hour, 30 minute by 30 minute. And so when you are shopping loans, if you shop a loan on Monday at 10 a.m. and then talk to a second lender Tuesday at 4 p.m., their interest rate quotes might be very, very different. And I had a gal who was literally like shopping me all day on Tuesday. And I was like, hey, the market looks like it's getting better. I'll call you in an hour. And the quote literally like dropped 0.25% in one day. And that stuff can happen. And so this is why I recommend like shopping same day and around the same time frame. It only takes a couple minutes to find out what somebody's interest rates are. If they're not willing to help you out with interest rates or give you some basic information, you have to, like, what are they hiding? I mean, that's just always been my thing. Now, obviously, you can't quote them because they haven't seen like your credit and your debt to income ratio. So if things change, you can't hold them to it, but you should be able to get a basic idea in a couple minutes. And if not, right, you may lose out on a better deal or better service or better product because you were taking too long and it's not apples to apples. So let me know if that was a good explanation on that. All right, so Kevin says, when interest rates go down, prices increase. Therefore, now that when interest rates go down, prices increase. Therefore, now that interest rates come up, prices will decrease. Is that correct? No, guys. And they're like, I think sometimes people get confused with things that are coincidental versus like reactive based on like, if this, then that. And so they're not related. So just so you know, values of homes and prices of homes are based on market conditions like supply and demand. So interest rates are increasing, but until demand decreases to an amount where there are more supplies of homes on the market, we will not see home prices go down. And even then, like, I hate to say home prices, it's home values go down. Right? The price is what somebody's willing to pay for it. The value of your house is something else. And so right now they've been running in parallel, but it does not, no, I do not think that the value of homes are going to go down because interest rates are coming up. I do think it will lower demand and again, be another reason that it's more buyer friendly, but we're still in a position, guys, it's a math problem. Even if it goes down another 50%, right? 5 people to 1 home is still 5 people to 1 home. All right. Oh, to me, it's the flustered type of emoji. Oh my God, that's what I feel like. I feel like the flustered emoji. So I hope I didn't fluster you, but yes, I do feel a little flustered, and hopefully you guys are okay with that. All right. So Realist P says, how are salaries keeping up with the housing market? Are people using their entire paychecks to pay their mortgage? How are people affording this? You know, for the longest time, the information that was available for the median income in the country hadn't been updated. And so there was this thought that, affordability was not as available to, more than half of the population. And then when they redid the math, they saw that actually it had risen quite an amount. And actually, last year, homes were actually more affordable than they were back in the boom. And so I thought that was an interesting perspective. And the unemployment number and the wage report that just came out this week showed that wages were actually increasing at a faster pace than people expected. And they were actually stronger than many of the economists thought. And so I will tell you that, at least in my arena, because that's what I know in terms of salaries, I can tell you that people are getting paid more than they ever have before. And most of the people that were qualifying, I mean, literally can qualify for more on paper than they feel comfortable making on a monthly basis. And so I don't think that the affordability problem is as big as we might have thought it might have been. So I hope that helps explain. All right, guys. So we are 6:40, guys. So keep getting your questions in. Don't forget to like this live. I'm doing my best, giving you my best after a long, hard day with half an eyebrow. Okay. Street Money says, will home prices take a hit with rising interest rates? Okay. So I love and appreciate that we put every question that gets emailed on to me, but I'm answering the same question like 10 times. Okay, so I think I just answered that. So hopefully, Street Money, I hope you were paying attention and you got your question answered. All right. I answered the Fed funds rate. Okay. So a lot of the same questions, and here's the thing, what's so hard is that, like, I get these questions obviously over and over sent to us in email, and what's hard is, like, I'm getting, what's a Fed funds rate? I think I just explained that, and says house prices are so high, there's no comfortable payment in a decent area. People are stretched too far, exclamation point. Don't you think a correction is coming? And it's like, okay, well, that's like not really a question. That's more of a statement, and it's more of an opinion based on probably that person's financial situation. And here's the thing, you can't, like, some people in the area that they're living in, they will never be able to afford. Like most people in California and New York City, they're just not able to buy because the cost of living is so high. Okay. And so when you think about that, like, it's not that you don't have an option. It's not like there's not a decent place in America for you to live. It's that you have to make sacrifices sometimes if home buying is the thing that you absolutely have to do. You know that there's other options for your money, guys, right? Like, you don't have to be a homeowner. You can max out your retirements. You can invest in the stock market. You should certainly be paying down your debt. And I think that we've been told forever that buying a home is literally the American dream. And for many people it is. I know for me, it's like one of the best investments I've ever made. But if you're in an area where it's too expensive to purchase, like, by all means, like, don't buy. And but also don't get angry about it, because you could just move to a lower cost area. And in fact, many people have chosen to do that, especially given the economic climate where you can work from home for many jobs. So that's what I'm going to say about that. The other thing is too, is like, and I wrote this in an article the other day. It's like, if you didn't qualify for the amount that you wanted to qualify for, and you've done everything that you can with your budget, is there somebody else in your family that you might consider partnering with? Or is there a friend that you might consider partnering with, or like your in-laws, right? There's lots of multi-generational houses, right, that can increase your budget and help you get into a different home. But you can also be strategic that way, So I'm just saying, I bought my first home with my brother. You've all heard that story. He happens to actually also be here. And on the elevator ride up, we were joking about how he bailed on my condo. Yeah, I'm not holding a grudge, and it was like 2008. Alrighty. Okay, so, Nicola, very nice to see you, honey. For those of you who don't know why he always posts a lizard emoji, Javier Vidana called me the lizard queen. And so any of you people who have followed his channel know that inside joke. All right, so it says, when keeping first home as an investment property and purchasing another home to live in, as can the rental income from the first property be used to offset that mortgage, and how does the 75% rule apply? This is an awesome question, and for a lot of you who want to get into investment properties, this move up strategy is an awesome way to do that. Now, a couple things that I'm going to caveat with is that you want to try to live in the home for a minimum of 2 years, primarily because if you sell within 5 years after that, you can still potentially get pay the lower capital gains tax. But so there's that one tip. And then two, when you do the move up strategy, essentially what you're doing is you're upgrading your primary residence. And when you buy a primary residence, it comes with better interest rates and lower down payments, which help you maximize your investment. And the first property typically will have a lower interest rate depending on obviously market conditions, because you would have qualified as a primary resident at that time. Okay, so you maximize your cash flow, you minimize your down payments, right? And we get a better interest rate for the next loan, right? So I love that strategy. Now, when you're trying to use the vacating property, so the house that you used to live in that you're moving out of, that's what we call it in the mortgage industry, a vacating property, to qualify. So when you rent it out, what we can do is we take whatever that gross rental amount is, we multiply it by 0.75, so we take 75% of that, and that's the amount that we can use to offset whatever the current mortgage payment is. Now, sometimes it'll cover it, sometimes there'll be a small deficit, other times there'll be an overage. Now, the overage cannot typically be used as any kind of income to qualify unless it's being reported on a tax return, okay? So it is a great way to qualify, right, and to help you offset your debt to income ratio. I hope I didn't nerd out on that and I answered your question. Yes, did I answer his question? All right. Okay, I always feel so judged by Zeke, you guys. He makes these sigh noises, or sometimes he's like, I just never know how I'm doing. Okay, all right, so how do I go about buying land and then buying a modular? Is this two separate loans? So typically, yes, they're two separate loans. I don't do either type of those loans. I only lend on a fixed properties. But there are lots of banks that lend on land. They have a specific down payment scenario, and then you finance, I believe, a modular home similarly to an automobile. But I'm not 100% sure on that, so sorry. Okay. In California, even storage units are expensive. Okay, dudes, I think everyone should move out of California. Just kidding, but kind of not kidding. All right, so Yomar says, what steps should one take to sell their first primary home and purchase a new home? Should someone reach out to a lender and see what they might be able to get approved for? And how does this work when you don't know how much your home will sell for? Okay, so that's a very detailed question. So a couple things. I always think that you should get your budget in line before you make any kind of decisions. So understanding first and foremost what it would take to qualify for the price point that you're looking for. And many of you guys already have a price point in mind. You've done some Zillow research. You know what the properties are going for in a neighborhood that you've been admiring, right? So we all have a general idea, and you want to start with your budget first. Once you get all of those action items in place, like you know what you're saving for your down payment, or you have your down payment set, your credits at the optimal range to get the best terms, right? You have your closing costs and your monthly payment. That's when I say to go ahead and talk to a real estate agent, and you want to talk to one that's preferably has a relationship with your bank, so that way you guys can coordinate together. I mean, there is a lot to be said with working with somebody who understands, the nuances of each other's business, because they just help make the transactions go that much smoother for you, the buyer, especially when you're doing two different things like buying and selling at the same time. Now, depending on the market that you're in, you will either want to sell the property beforehand and get a lease agreement to live in there for an extended period of time, or you will either ask for an extended close of escrow on your new purchase and list your property right away. There's a variety of ways of doing this. Some other ways that we do this in the financing realm, because lots of times people can qualify for multiple mortgages, is we have you put down a lower down payment, qualify with both payments, and then do what's called a recast afterwards, which means that you will do a principal reduction and then recast your loan as if you always put down the larger amount, right? This helps give people a lot of flexibility, but essentially, again, it starts with talking to your mortgage loan officer, finding out all the details of what it would take, strategizing, communicating with a real estate agent that knows your area, works with your loan officer, and that person's going to advise you like what the best strategy is moving forward on the sale of your house. God. That was a lot of minutes of talking straight. My mouth got super dry and I forgot my water. Okay, guys. Okay, so we have 15 minutes left, guys. Keep putting your questions in there. Glad that you're liking that I'm nerding out. Hopefully this stuff is super valuable for you. All right, so Coco says, Lizzie, maybe I should discuss the availability of transferring your tax base. I realize that it's a one-time deal that most folks do not know about. You guys, I hate to say it, but I do not know what she's talking about. I'm going to have to email her back, and I just read that online. I don't know what she's talking about. Oh, no. Okay. All right, let's see. There are 98 million baby boomers in the U.S., 80% of them being homeowners, $68 million. Oh, my God, this person has done their research. Good God, Marie. Baby boomers range from 1949 to 1964-ish and will be dying off over the next 5 to 20 years. Isn't supply just a matter of time? So Marie is obviously not a long-term fan of this channel because I always talk about what's this thing called the silver tsunami. And I'm so sad that Darren's not on because Darren always used to make fun of me for how often I talk about the death of the boomers. But yes, I actually do think that there are a couple of things that will impact supply in the future. But we're talking about like 10 years from now. And so one of them is when a large percentage of the boomers start passing, right? They do own like 1 in 3 homes. And so that is a large percentage of supply. But you have to realize that both millennials are a very large population. Gen Z after them is 10% greater than they are. And so we still have a long way when it comes to like supply and demand. Now, the next thing, guys, that will happen is that millennials waited a long time to have children and they're having fewer children. And so, I mean, like 30 years from now, there's definitely going to be a supply issue. Mark my words, if anyone's still watching my YouTube channel 30 years from now when I'm super old. How old will I be? Oh my God, I think I'll be almost 80. God, I'm not going to be doing YouTube by 80. No, how old will I be in 30 years? It's almost 70. So I'm going to be 68. I'm 38. God, I'm so tired. For a second, I thought I was 48. I feel old as fuck today. And 48 is not old. I'm just tired. All right. Anyway, so yes, by the time that 30 years hits, we will hopefully not be doing real estate anymore, or doing, I don't know. I don't know if there's any 70-year-old YouTubers out there doing real estate shows. Let's hope not. All right, so there is that. So Mike says, for FHA mortgage insurance, for FHA mortgage insurance, when you say permanent, do you mean throughout the life of the loan, or does it continue after you paid the loan? Actually, that is a really great question, and if I said permanent, I should definitely clarify. It is for the life of the loan. I probably meant that it just could not be removed without a refinance, or without paying it off. A lot of times people think once they get to 20% on an FHA mortgage that it will come off. And I think I was probably trying to drive a point home. And sometimes I obviously speak in hyperbole. So I will watch it. Sorry, Mike. Okay. Green Energy Rule says, I just paid off all my credit cards. Do you have any idea how soon I'll see an increase in my credit score? Fun fact, credit reports typically every 5 days. So the 5th, the 10th, the 15th, the 20th, the 25th, the 30th, and so on. And so what you'll want to do is call your credit card companies and find out when they're going to report to the credit bureaus. A lot of times they'll tell you this right off the bat. And so what you'll want to do is make sure that the payments are made every month before that period. A lot of times people think it's like when their due date is, and that is not correct. Most of the time people will say, but I paid my credit card off every month without fail, and they still show balances on their credit report. And that's because that is typically a different reporting date. So I hope that helps. All right. For the move up strategy, how does a loan officer calculate how much rental income will be used for the property a person is vacating? Well, I normally speak to the real estate agent that's going to be helping them rent out their properties. They can do a CMA, which is a comparable market analysis based on other rentals in the area that are similar square footage and similar, like property styles and condition. And so that will give me a good rough estimate on that. And then what we have to do is we also have to order an appraisal on that property, one, to make sure that it has, the sufficient equity that's needed depending on the loan product. And then that will also give us like an accurate detail reading for what the rental is going to be. All right, so Yomar says, to avoid capital gains, does one have to be over the 2-year mark or on the date? So I believe it has to be exactly 2 years, so like on the date. Okay, can I use a credit card as a house down payment? Franco R, no, 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 no. You cannot borrow any money for your down payment unless it is secured to an asset. So like a line of credit on a home, if you got an auto loan, right? And those things have to be included in your debt to income ratio. Lots of times people think that they can pull out extra money from their student loans, a personal loan, a credit card advance, and none of those things are allowed for your home loan. I'm glad you asked. And I'm glad you asked in all caps, which is why I yelled at you. Okay, so Green Energy Rule says, do you think I still need to use a credit card to keep my credit score high, or is my car and mortgage loan enough to keep it high? So people want to see that you're actively charging on your credit and paying off on a regular basis. The use of credit is actually very important in keeping your overall credit score high. Whenever there's a long term of like inactivity, sometimes the creditor will close your credit card. And guys, this could be as low as like 6 months to 2 years of inactivity, depending on the creditor. So you really do want to pay attention to this and make sure that you keep the balances no greater than 30% of whatever the limit is, and that you're charging on a regular basis. Never close a long-term credit account. I know that sometimes, people don't like outstanding credit, and if they're not applying for new credit, they're like, heck, it doesn't matter. And then they're angry when they don't have an 800 FICO score. So if you're not going to use the credit, I recommend just letting it age out. But you do want to continue to use revolving credit over time to keep the score high. Oh, Devin Cahill. Hello. I've missed your intellectualness on these lives. So for the move up strategy, do you need to upgrade, or can a borrower have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath? I don't know what. I'm tired today, guys. Sorry. 2-bath, 1,500 square foot for another similar square foot. So here's the thing. So kind of, right? So an upgrade can be like in location, it can be in amenities, it can be in improvements to the house, it can be in condition. So like, this one is like a 2021 versus this house was built in 1959. Upgrade is subjective, right, to the person, but an underwriter will typically ask you to explain why you're buying a new primary residence. All right, so Devin has a really great credit tip. Is the original loan amount nothing? Wait. Oh, so here's so what he's saying is credit tip. It is the original loan amount. Nothing stops anyone from taking out $10,000 auto loan and then paying off 8.5 the next month. So here's the thing. When it comes to installment debt, you really do want to let it age for more than 12 months. The first 6 months of it actually really doesn't give you any kind of credit benefit. And whenever you open up a new account, believe it or not, it actually hurts your credit score. So that is maybe a good tip, right? But I would probably try it on something that's like a revolving line of credit versus like a short-term auto loan, right? You at least want something that you're going to make 12 months of consistent payments on. All right, so Laura says, where can I find out information on down payment assistance? It's just an easy Google search, guys, like down payment assistance, and then put in your zip code. You should find, the whatever municipalities are offering that and advertising it, and then you will find the local programs. If you are in Arizona, you can look up Home in 5 and Home Plus. Those are the programs that most people are aware of. I would also check out Newtown CDC, right? They have lots of really great community reinvestment loans, and they even have this land lease product, so a community land trust that I think is also very advantageous for first-time home buyers in low to moderate income. So I mean, lots of different things, but you guys want to pay attention and you want to Google search that. Okay, so if I let my credit card age out and open up that I actually want, is it okay or bad? Yeah, you can let one credit card age out and open up a different credit card that maybe has better benefits. Absolutely. But again, like I said, for the first 3 to 6 months, you aren't going to see a whole bunch of benefit to that. Whenever you open up a new credit account, depending on the age of your credit, the depth, how many trade lines you already have, most of the time this hurts people, especially when you have newer credit. And so 6 months is the magical time frame when you'll start seeing a positive benefit to new credit account, especially on a revolving line. So you just want to pay attention to that. Like if you're going to do this like around the time that you're qualifying for a loan, I probably wouldn't recommend it. Okay, so Yomar says, on a recent loan applications, do you feel like incomes are now looking like they have to be higher than they were a year before? Cost of homes are significantly higher than 2 years ago. Yes, I anecdotally, I am not seeing a bunch of people call in and not qualify. I'm actually very surprised at the amount that people can actually purchase, and I'm also very shocked at the minimal amount of debt that I'm seeing people qualify with. Now, this is just my one person's perspective on this, but I will also say that the National Unemployment and Income Report just came out, and they're showing that wages are stronger than they anticipated. And I think that there's a lot of data pointing in the fact that incomes are increasing, especially given the amount of people that didn't return to work. So I don't think the affordability crisis is as big as people have made it out to be. At least I haven't seen data that supports that. Okay, guys, so we have 2 minutes left, so let's get one final question or one final questions, whatever. If you guys have anything dire, I will do my best to answer it. All right, so Tori says, how do you save for a down payment? Are there any tools that I can share? So here's what I recommend, best strategies. So if you can, always save 10% of all of your net take-home paychecks, right? Bonus paychecks, Christmas gifts, anything, 10% if you can do it. Most people can save up a down payment in a year to 3 years. If you are somebody that cannot, what I always recommend is try to save up 1 hourly rate a day in terms of saving. So if you make $20 an hour, save $20 a day. And typically, again, that's like a 3.5-year strategy for being able to save up a down payment. And then also look up again what grants are in your area, what down payment assistance programs are in your area. You look up your tax refund. The majority of people get $2,400 in a tax refund, right? These funds can be used for a down payment or can be used for closing costs. So definitely check into both of those strategies. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you. We are now hit 7 p.m. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to like this live and subscribe to the channel so you never miss any of my great mortgage tips in your future. Until next time, guys. See you next week.